Thank you for joining us again. And today we're going to be talking about how to fill units in 2023. I like that you added in 2023 because we are definitely in a different market than we have been in the last few years. And it's definitely important to address marketing in this year and also next year. What's that going to look like? What should you be changing? What are you not doing? That's all what Tanvir and Dave Spooner here are going to be talking about. So these are our guests today. Now, I do want to introduce myself as well. Alexandra, Director of Marketing and Education here at the American Apartment Owners Association. And I also am going to show you here the poll questions results. So I think Dave and Tanvir, you can see the results on your end, right?
Yep.
So it looks like most of you all are under 25 units, and then we have a good group of you in the 26 to 50, and then a couple 51 to 100 and a few 100 plus. So a mixed bag here today. And I think we'll be able to have something for really all of you, regardless of how many units you own or manage. All right, so let's start with the introduction slide so I can tell them a little more about you all. So Dave Spooner, Dave has been working in real estate tech since 2013. He's the CEO and co-founder of Innago, which is a property management software that is free for landlords. While he may not be good at either, he loves pickup basketball and playing a round of golf. I love that. And he is also a real estate investor. He does own property and he is a landlord himself. He has 10 plus years of experience. So he'll be sharing what his clients are doing on the platform, but also what he's been doing himself with his own rental units. And Sattar. Tanvir joined Innago 5 years ago and helps with working with business development, marketing, and strategic partnerships. He makes Innago better every day, which is great. And outside of Innago, Tanvir loves kicking the soccer ball around. So both sporty guys on the call, and also is a real estate investor and landlord. So he'll also be speaking from that perspective as well, and has 8+ years of experience. So welcome. Thank you so much, Tanvir and Dave, for joining today. I'm really excited to hear your presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us. Obviously, we're not sporty enough, or we probably wouldn't have careers in real estate right now. But Alexandra, thanks a lot for introducing us today. Also, a little bit about us. So Dave started Innago in 2017. I shortly joined in August of 2017. So we've both been in the business, both personally and then also with our clients for almost 6 years now. So the experiences that we're going to share today, some of them will be our own experiences, but a lot of the experience will be from our actual clients. So our smallest landlord on Innago has 1 unit and our largest has over 4,000. So there's a big breadth of all kinds of different real estate investors that we work with day in and day out. And we're going to share some of their experiences when it comes to marketing. And then at the end, we're also going to talk a little bit about Innago. So let's get into it first, what we're going to cover. So again, as Alexander was saying, there is a market shift now in 2023, right? Tenants are getting a lot of things are changing to favor the tenants as far as laws and things like that. Like since we're based out of Cincinnati, and for instance, we were the first city to actually pass a law where we have to give a different alternative for security deposits. And not sure where you guys are at, but that's definitely something that's changing in the market. So we want to also think about that when we're marketing to our tenants, right? It's not just in Cincinnati. We want to give option when I'm saying in Cincinnati for us. So Dave and I are both investors in Cincinnati, but doing something simple like giving a video tour, right? That opens up your market to not just people who can go in and see your property. It's also going to be people that might be moving into the city that you have your properties in. So think about that. And we're going to cover a lot more than just that today. First of all, it's identifying your target audience, right? Who they are, creating the perfect listing, how we're going to market that, how we're going to stage the property, and then finally how we're going to conduct the showing. Main goal of today is to minimize tenant turnover. So are you thinking about 90 days before your lease is coming due? Is this tenant going to stay? What does your lease say? Like questions like that are things that you want to think about when you're thinking about tenant turnover. And there's softwares out there that might be able to streamline that for you, and just like Innago, that basically what will happen is we'll send you a reminder and say, hey, your lease is coming due in 90 days. Maybe it's a good idea to reach out to your tenant and think about, are they staying or not? And if they are not staying, we're going to go through some really good tools that are out there to walk you through getting your property listed and then also rented. So let's hop into it. So we're going to hop into the first poll question first, though, and I'll turn it over to Alexandria.
Great. Let me go ahead and launch that here. So do you use online listing tools? So this is like your Zillow, your Trulia, your even Craigslist. I think that's the OG in my mind when I think of online listing tools. A little sketchy, but it's still out there. For those of you who are saying no, which I'm not getting any yet, by the way. Okay, I got one. For those of you saying no, you're really lucky that you haven't had to move online. Maybe you're doing still word of mouth, or you have, some sign up and you're getting enough people who just happen to know that your property is available. So let me go ahead and show those results. There you go. 4 people said no.
That's good. So we did this internally as well, and we got 0 people said no. So it's good to see some people are still using offline marketing. So we're going to talk about offline and online marketing today, actually. And I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Dave, and he's going to talk about our target audience.
Yeah, hey everybody. So I think this is something that landlords often don't spend enough time thinking about. It's not just, can I fill my rental, but can I fill my rental with a tenant that's going to be here for a long time, that's going to be a good renter, that's the right fit for the types of rentals that I own and manage. And before I kind of dive into the different things that you can do to find your target audience, I do want to preface it by saying, of course, you always want to abide by fair housing laws, which means you cannot discriminate based on, gender, based on religion, based on a lot of situational factors. So please do keep that in mind, but that doesn't mean that you can't try to find renters that are the best fit for your property. And some of the things you can keep in mind are, okay, I have a bunch of properties right next to a college campus. I'm probably targeting college students in that 18 to 25 range on age. Doesn't mean I'll exclusively rent to them, but when I'm looking at potential marketing channels, when I'm looking at ways to position my rental, I want to keep that in mind. I want to think about that. Same with income, same with macro environment. And as you choose the different marketing channels, I think a lot of landlords, they end up kind of just saying, oh, I posted on Zillow and whoever comes through, comes through. But there's a lot of other opportunities out there, right? Perhaps you need to rent to, or you're looking to rent to pet owners, right? So maybe there are some locations around town that you can put up physical advertisements, right? Maybe the local dog park, right? That could be a great place to attract pet owners if you think that's an edge that you have within your market. Or again, I mentioned student housing. Keep those things in mind and try to target the places that the types of renters that you believe will be the best fit for your properties congregate. You also can think about your investing strategy and how it aligns with the types of renters that you're looking for. If you have Class C housing, you don't want to go advertise in locations in which the renters are predominantly Class A renters, or vice versa, right? If your amenities are such that, it's extremely high end, you probably don't want to go advertising in the places where people looking for lower rent are searching for properties. So keep in mind the features that you have, the amenities that you offer in your location, and try to locate avenues and channels that tap into and align with that. The other thing that we always recommend people keep in mind when targeting audience is sort of track and maintain a finger on the pulse of the outcome of your renters, right? So after somebody has rented from you, remember which marketing channel they came from. Were they a good renter? Were they a bad renter? And you may notice some patterns. You might notice that the local classifieds, despite how great it is and how easy it is to advertise online, for whatever reason, the local classifieds and the local newspaper just produce the best tenants, right? The people that happen to still be looking there always pay on time, take great care of the property, super easy to work with, barely have any maintenance issues. Whereas a particular online site in your area might attract a lot of renters that aren't a great fit for your property. It's hard to say. Every location is different. But keep that in mind, try to pay attention to that, and you'll notice a big difference over time in the types of renters you're bringing in. So just a little bit on target audience. The primary thing is to pay attention to the types of channels you're tapping into and how they align with your investment strategy as a landlord or a property manager.
All right. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about listing creations. So what are the components of a listing, right? There's four basic components that we're going to run through today. I'll take the first half and Dave will take the second half. And this is a screenshot of Innago. So really easy to list on. The first thing is your headline. The next thing is photos, right? You can't list a property without photos. After that, we're going to talk about the price and then finally the description. So 4 easy steps, you're going to create a listing. All right, first thing is the headline. So the headline is going to be your most critical component, right? This is just like writing an email. This is your subject line. It's the first impression, and also it's going to be the first impression of your business. First number that should be in your headline should be the price, right? That is the number one determining factor for renters. So like Dave was saying with Class C housing, right? So that's going to be the first thing they see, even if it's Class A housing, right? Rent is $2,000 or $3,000 a month. That's okay. They want to know exactly how much they pay. The next number, the next determining factor is going to be number of beds and baths, right? How many renters are there? If a person's looking for 2 beds because they want an office to work from home and then also a bedroom to sleep in, then that's going to change their criteria right there. Next thing you want to put in the headline is the building type. Is it an apartment? Is it a condo? Is it a single family home? And then after that, the neighborhood that they're in, right? They might be searching somewhere like Cincinnati, but let's say that they're actually looking to live in Over the Rhine, right? That's where our office is right now. They want to walk to work. So that is what they're looking for. And then finally, you want to make sure you put in one feature, right? What is your best feature? Maybe it's a skyline view. Maybe it comes with a hot tub, something like that. So one that we put together, just for example, $1,500 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment in Over the Rhine, Cincinnati, with an impressive skyline view. So very short, very simple, very concise, but it gets across every one of those 5 bullet points we just talked about. All right. And then next slide is photos, right? So photos can be very good or very bad. You want to take photos on a sunny day versus a rainy day. I've seen some really bad photos looking through listings and then looking through properties that I've tried to purchase, or maybe an investor at Innago has tried to purchase. One thing that I talked to a property manager about, and they said, don't be lazy, right? Make sure you use accurate photos. A lot of people that are on the webinar today, I think probably everyone, you guys own apartments. So you might, don't be lazy. Don't use unit 101 when you're actually using unit 103, because that's going to break the trust of a prospective renter right there. So if it is 101, go into 101 and take new photos. Update those constantly. Don't over edit photos. And then what I was talking about at the beginning, make sure you can add a video tour. You can shoot the video tour on your iPhone. With Innago, you can upload that video via URL very easily. And then that way the prospective tenant can see a video as well. And then make sure you get the right angles. Okay. So examples for good versus bad photos. So this is a wide angle photo versus narrow angle. So the photo on the left with the wide angle, that's going to look better. It shows a skyline view, where this narrow photo, it doesn't really give you a good idea of what the rest of the room looks like. And this one on the right, the person who is taking the photo is in the photo. So that's a big no-no. Second, it's very cluttered. So you want to make sure you declutter the space before you take our photos. And the one on the left, right? They're taking a photo in the bathroom, but they're making sure they're not in the mirror. So make sure that you're not in the photos and declutter the space. All right. We're going to check in with Alexandra and get the next poll question.
All right. So, question, how recently have you taken photos for your listings? And we have 0 to 6 months, 6 months to a year to 2 years, or 2 years plus. very curious to see what the results come in. I suppose this might also have to do with your vacancy rate as well. If you've had a
Mhm.
tenant for a long time, maybe you might have some older photos in the mix. Interesting. By the way, we have a real estate photographer on the Zoom today, which is interesting, and he agreed with your tips. So thank you, Michael, on the call. All right, let's see if I can show the results. There we go.
Awesome.
So it looks like most of you all in the last 6 months, but then it kind of, varies from there. So good job on those from 0 to 6 months, I'd say.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Dave.
Well, I was just going to say one other quick photo tip for my rentals. I think that even if your unit's not going to be furnished always photos better, right? Especially if the furniture looks good, right? If it's well appointed. When we have a renter that has great style, that has really done a nice job maintaining the unit, and we really like their setup, we will often actually ask them, hey, can we give you $50 credit on your rent and go through and take some pictures with this perfectly furnished, beautiful looking apartment? And it makes such a massive difference when that listing goes up versus when we just had an empty apartment photos. It makes the room look bigger. It makes it look more lived in. It makes people start to think about, oh, I could use this space in this way. It's a really great way to go. So I strongly encourage you to leverage your existing tenants if they're taking good care of your property to get some expertly kind of crafted and set up photos for yourself.
Good advice.
For sure. Don't give the $50 right away. I would ask first and then rebuttal with 50. But I'll turn it over to Dave and do where he can talk about descriptions.
Yeah, feel free to haggle with them. Okay, cool. So descriptions. So in a description for your listing, you're going to want to, of course, touch on all the main components. The first batch of those are going to be the amenities that are included, the specs of the particular unit, the pet policy, whether or not you allow them, the location, the lease terms, and the contact info. This is basic stuff that everybody's going to look for. And just as much as you want to bring tenants to you, bring potential applicants, you also want to qualify people that aren't going to be a good fit. Because believe me, after the 10th showing on the unit, you're going to be sick of running through people that immediately afterwards say, oh, you don't allow dogs? I can't rent here, right? So get a lot of that qualification out of the way with this basic description info from the jump. If you want to switch to the next slide, Tanvir. After that, here are some tips for ways to actually structure that description to really attract renters. One is to use bulleted lists. This is great for the specs and for the amenities that are included, or for any kind of high level things that you want to include, like about the location, for example. Also be very precise with the numbers, give them exact square footage, anything else that you need to include, like fees that you're going to be charging, be very precise there. Use rich adjectives, be descriptive, put your writing hat on to really make it pop. Make sure that grammatically everything is correct, right? You don't want to have a sloppy listing that doesn't reflect well on you as a manager, as an owner, on your property, etc. And then express value and emotion. And again, this goes back to writing a really impactful description. Now, I want to give you a tip that I have recently started doing with my rental properties. I'm sure a lot of you on the call have heard of ChatGPT. If you have not tried it out, I encourage you to do so. Go to ChatGPT and just ask it to write a listing for your property. Even just with the address, it can often come up with something that will really surprise you based on available information online. You can then give it additional information if needed. You can take that text and do anything you want with it, right? You can add to it, edit it, etc. It's a fantastic way to get started, to have a really strong listing. I was an English major and a history major. I've written a lot of papers. ChatGPT's listings blow mine out of the water. I don't have the time to put in to write the kind of stuff that it's throwing together in just a few seconds. So I really encourage you to try ChatGPT to write your descriptions. It'll save you a lot of time, and it's going to come up with awesome awesome listing descriptions for you. I also see a few people in the chat mentioning Grammarly. That's a great one to accomplish that, punctuation tab that we have here, the grammatical piece of it, to make sure that things are nice and tight. So that's there's a lot of free services online that can help you if you're not a writer, if you're not used to this kind of thing, quickly put together really, really strong listing descriptions. Tanvir, am I on prices?
Yeah.
Okay, my apologies. And then finally, prices. So on pricing, a couple of tips for you. First of all, you do want to be cautious with asking other landlords about what they charge in price. There are some rules around landlords sort of banding together to set prices for a market, but that doesn't mean you can't go do that research. You can still talk to your other local landlords and just say, hey, what are you getting on a one bed these days, right? Now, you shouldn't go back and forth and say, hey, let's move those to 1,200 instead of 1,100, but you can go do a little bit of research independently at networking events, ask around, find out what people are charging on their prices. Also, definitely use any other online listing services. Check Zillow, check Trulia, check Rental Source and Zumper and Realtor.com. One word of caution on this, I do think that landlords sometimes see those prices listed on those platforms and assume that whatever's listed there is what people are getting. That's not always the case. Oftentimes there's a negotiation that happens after the fact, or maybe it's listed for that, but a week later they drop it $100. So just because you see that price doesn't guarantee you're going to get it. That's really most important when you're evaluating a potential investment, to make sure you're not going on that too much. But when you're setting your price, keep that in mind. It's probably pretty close, but it may not be exactly precise to what people are actually renting for when you're looking at those comparables on a platform like Zillow. Also, keep in mind that there are certain amenities that can really impact your price. Again, if you're going to allow pets, if you're going to allow dogs and cats, you can typically charge a little bit more. Or you can charge the same amount, but you can then add on a pet fee. Certainly don't hide that information, but your listing price might be a little bit lower than it otherwise would be if you separate out that pet fee from the listed price, right? Because not everyone has a dog. So yep, it rents for 1,100. And if you have a dog, it's going to be $1,200, right? So you can list that for 1,100. So there may be some other fees that you can kind of carve out and make those additions on top of that rental price that makes that rent look a little bit better to the average Joe that goes in and looks at it. So be sure to take into account prices that you're hearing through the grapevine from other landlords, prices that you're seeing online, and the amenities that you can use to affect that price favorably or to just raise it in any direction. All right. So when marketing your rentals, there's a number of different channels that you can keep in mind. If you want to go to the next slide, Tanvir. First of all, when you're setting a marketing budget for yourself, you want to keep in mind how many different units you have, what your average tenancy is, what your average vacancy is, and therefore you can really set your overall budget for it. Obviously, if you have just a handful of units, you don't want to spend tens of thousands of dollars in marketing those units. You don't want to go through marketing channels that are going to be incredibly expensive, like a TV advertising spot to say, hey, I got a one bed down on South Main available, right? That's going to be overkill. But if you have thousands of units, that might make a lot more sense. So keep in mind where you're situated, sort of in the food chain for rentals, and try to align your budget to that. So a smaller number of units is probably going to use more traditional channels, more one-off, more limited costs. Average tenancy, you're going to want to think about, am I short term, which requires more advertising, am I long term, which requires shorter advertising for briefer periods over time, and how long are these units vacant? The longer they're vacant, the more you should be willing to spend on marketing to close that vacancy. Marketing components include things like listing sites, social media, a company website, and offline marketing. Each of these are going to be dependent. You can go back to that slide for a second. Each of these is going to be dependent on, again, your situation. So I'd say bare minimum, you should likely be using listing sites just because they're so easy and so inexpensive to get started with. If you have enough units, if the types of people you're renting to are on social media, it may be valuable to have a social media presence as well. That can be as simple as a Facebook page, but it could also be a Twitter account, or even some people these days, a TikTok, right? Where you're posting daily or weekly or whatever it may be. But having that presence can give you exposure depending on the types of renters you're looking for. A company website is great. Again, if you have enough rentals, you can start to target what's known as SEO with your company website. And then finally, offline marketing, if you want to advertise in local channels, like I mentioned, at the dog park, at whatever it may be, on the classifieds. Okay, Tanvir, we can move on. So for listing sites, again, just about everybody should be using listing sites if they're not already. You can go individually to listing sites like Zillow and publish your listing, but you can also publish from what's called a syndication platform. Innago happens to be a syndication platform, the company that Tanvir and I work for. So if you set up an Innago account, which again is free, you can create a property, and with just a couple of clicks, you can publish that property and that listing to a wide variety of sites that are really commonly used throughout the internet. So you can get your property right on Zillow, you can get it right on Zumper, you can get it on Realtor.com and all of their affiliated websites like Trulia and Doorsteps and everything else that those companies own. And in just a couple of clicks and in just a few moments, you can have your listing available to tens of thousands, millions of renters even exposed and seeing your listing. So that's definitely a way to go if you want quick and fast access to a lot of different listing sites. Social media, again, I mentioned it's really dependent on the clientele that you're looking to rent to. Facebook page is probably the most basic version that you would want to have, but depending on who you're renting to, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, etc., might also be useful channels to tap into. Company website. So search engine optimization is SEO. I mentioned that before. With search engine optimization, you're actually trying to get Google to rank you higher when somebody searches for things related to your property. So for example, if somebody searches for a 1-bedroom unit in Cincinnati, Ohio, somebody's at the top of those rankings. And the person at the top of those rankings is probably getting a lot more leads than anybody else. Now, to be at the top of those rankings for such a general search term is really expensive and time consuming. So for many landlords, especially with a smaller portfolio, it may not make a ton of sense. You also need a little bit of technical know-how, or you need to hire people with that technical know-how. So this will kind of depend on what your situation is and how much you need. If you have a lot of units and you have a company website, it's definitely worth it to at least learn a little bit about search engine optimization and try to position yourself to move up those rankings, because it can make a world of difference. Paid advertising is when you go to someone like Google and you actually pay them money to list your website at the top. So when you do that Google search for 1-bedroom available in Cincinnati, there are typically a couple of listings at the top that have ad written next to them. Those listings have paid to be there. They've paid Google to be listed at the top. Again, this can get expensive, right? Everybody that wants to be at the top of that is going to bid on that spot. So that bidding can really shoot up quite a bit. So you don't want to be too reliant on this, but depending on your portfolio, the season that you're looking for, and how specific you are with your rental terms and your target audience, this can be a really viable way to move forward. We could do like 5 webinars just on SEO and paid advertising. If this is something you're interested in, you can certainly feel free to reach out to us. There's also a lot of resources online that you can look into. But again, it does require a little bit of technical know-how or hiring people that have that technical know-how, which means increased expenses for yourself. All right, last one is offline marketing. That's things like newspapers, yard signs, going through more corporate channels and referrals. Again, this is really where you most carefully want to align your target audience to your offline marketing strategy. So think about where you are, who you're trying to rent to, who you're trying to attract. If you're renting to student housing, advertise in the student newspaper, right? If you live in a small community, yard signs could be a great way to go to find those rentals or those renters. But offline marketing, all channels are not going to be created equal, and certainly not all channels will be created equal for your target audience and for your rentals. So this is where you really want to do some internal analysis. You get a little creative, and you can find some great ways to find additional renters, but it is going to be dependent on where you are and who you're looking for.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about staging. I think Dave hit the nail on the head earlier when he was talking about photos. So with staging, obviously you don't want to stage, right? That costs money, that costs time. So if you do have a good renter in the property right now and they have a good sense of style, take photos of their property because it's going to be a lot cheaper than staging. But let's dive into staging essentials. First thing you want to do is declutter, right? People always think it's adding furnitures and decorations. You definitely want that, but you want it to have a clean, very clean look. So if you have a tenant in there right now, or you're turning a current home into a rental or something like that, try to get rid of as much as possible. And then too much clutter, that's going to make the renter feel like, wow, this space is really small. Next thing is clean. I think this is kind of a no-brainer, but definitely something you want to think of. Fresh coat of paint goes a long way. I've walked in some really ugly properties and then seen the after photos where just they do the light gray, which is really in style right now, and the property looks bigger, it looks lighter, things like that. So something to think about with the fresh coat of paint. And then lighting. So add lights when needed. So obviously in this property on the right, they've added in some can lighting and things like that. I don't think you have to go that far. Just for a 1-bedroom apartment or something like that, but definitely maybe add some lights for the photos. That way the property looks more desirable. Next up, staging non-essentials. So some things to think about. Just adding a doormat, right? That's going to make someone feel make the property feel a lot more homey. Stack a few books, maybe with some accent pieces, plants. Obviously, everyone loves a little greenery, whether it's in the workspace or also add in some plants. They don't have to be real, just have some fake plants that you can move in and out for staging purposes. Some other things that make the property look bigger, maybe you can add a mirror. So that's going to make a small room look bigger. So just some things to think about with staging. And then I will turn over to Dave and he's going to talk, or sorry, one more slide. So staging specific rooms. So some rooms to really think about: the kitchen, right? That's where everyone's going to go to eat and then also entertain. So maybe you can add a KitchenAid to the counter where it's going to feel more homey, or maybe some cookbooks. With the master bedroom, you want to add in definitely make sure you have a bed in there, maybe add some photos, accent pillows, some pops of color, something like that, where people start thinking of this property of how they would furnish it and things like that. Bathroom, make sure you declutter it. We obviously saw an awful one earlier in the presentation, so just try to make it clean. And then maybe add some towels or something like that to give that homey feel. And then finally, the patio. If you do have a patio space, you might want to add a grill or bistro lighting. And then my tip always, if you have bistro lighting, turn it on, right? Even if it's during the day, it's going to give that ambiance that the prospective renter is really going to like. So keep those lights on for the photos or even during showings. So I will now turn it over to talk to Dave about showings.
Yeah, and one other thing on staging, if you have multiple units available, let's say in a single building or that are in close proximity to each other, don't feel like you necessarily have to invest in your time and money in staging every single unit. Another thing that you can do, Tanvir mentioned, never show photos of a different unit, but after you've shown them the unit they're going to rent, you can say to them, hey, I'd love to show you another unit that we have that's it's a different layout, or maybe it's our 2-bed, but we've got it all set up and staged so you can get a feel for what these units can really look like. And that can make a big difference. I mean, Tanvir's totally right. Having that stage set up is just such a powerful way to get people emotionally invested in the property that they're considering renting. So any way you can find if you say, hey, I can't afford to do this for every one of my units, you can still find ways to provide that to them. But as far as showings are concerned, there's a few different steps to the showing process. You've got your pre-tour, your tour itself, and post-tour, and each one of these really matters. A lot of landlords just think about the actual tour themselves, the actual showing themselves, but there's more to it than that. So the pre-tour is really all about scheduling, and it's also about disqualifying potential applicants. I mentioned this a little bit before, but nobody has the time or patience to tour every single human being that's going to be interested in their property, especially if they hit their channels really well and get a lot of inquiries. So when you're scheduling those tours, there's a few things that you can keep in mind. One is pre-screening your tenants. Now, In some locations, that means fully screening them with credit, criminal, and eviction history. I've certainly seen landlords that do that. For my properties, I choose to do a basic free application that just asks questions like references and employment and their income. It's not going to charge them any money. It's not going to pull their full credit history or their criminal background check. It's just to get that basic qualifying information to ensure that this person makes enough money to rent this property. You know, if I allow pets, did they mention something about pets or not? If I don't allow pets, you know, same deal. Some of those qualifying pieces of information that can avoid too many showings for you, which is something you'll certainly want to do after a little while. The other thing that you can do with your scheduling is try to group people together, right? So this is beneficial for multiple reasons. One, if you have 3 people that you're showing the apartment to, that creates a sense of demand, and you're more likely to have somebody at the end say, hey, I really want this. I don't want this, you know, person next to me to get it out from under me. I'm going to put my application in right away, or I'm going to sign this lease, get the security deposit in right away. So it's a huge benefit to actually have multiple people going through the showing all at once. And secondly, for your own sanity, it makes life a lot easier, right? I'd much rather spend 25 minutes walking 3 people through than 3 25-minute sessions over the course of a 2-day period, right? So we always try to get all of our showings within a few days scheduled on a single day. We usually give a couple pockets of time and we say, hey, if you can make this, great. If you can't, we can send you a digital copy, or we can try to move you into the next group, but you might miss out on this one. And again, it creates a sense of urgency, makes our lives easier, simplifies the whole process. One last note, the application piece. So again, we use Innago just for that basic application, and you can do that through the software for free just to get that initial information from the potential renter. Okay, Tanvir, next one. All right, so you've, you know, pre-screened, you got 3 people that all look good, they make enough money, everything looks good at the outset, and you've decided you're going to do a tour with them, you've scheduled it, you got, you know, 2 o'clock on Friday, whatever it is. First of all, be there and, you know, present in person as much as you can. Also, be aware of how you're looking and how you're positioning yourself. You matter just as much as the apartment, right? Are you communicating clearly? Do you seem trustworthy? Are you put together? The one exception is if you're in work clothes, you should say something like, oh, I just came from working on my other property. Then they know that you're the one that's out there actually making the difference on those properties, and that can make a difference too. But generally, think about how you're presenting just as much as how the property itself is presenting. Likewise, be there on time. Don't be late. Try to be there a few minutes early. Actually, you don't want to keep them waiting for you, and be sure to communicate with them if anything does pop up.
One thing to add there,
yeah.
Dave, for the arriving on time, I always try to get there 15 minutes early, just so I know, like, I can turn the lights on, I can open up a window, maybe like no one's been in the property for a few days, so it just has that weird smell to it. You know, you can light a candle or something like that, but it really gives them that home feel and home ambiance to help you sell the property.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great call. And then you want to personalize the tour, right? Talk about your relationship with the unit. Maybe talk about, obviously you don't want to give out too much information, but you can talk a little bit in generalizations about previous renters that have lived there, what they've really liked about it, how they've engaged with the property. So for example, our first property that we ever remodeled, every time I take somebody through, I always mention, you know, this is the first one. This is the first one we ever got. We did it. It's really close to our heart. We love this place. We want people that are going to take great care of it. And it really makes a difference. You can see it resonating with people when you say things like that. So personalize the tour, both for them and for yourself. Don't be overbearing. You want to give them space to explore the unit. There are some people that are very outgoing and talkative, but there are also people that are very introverted and don't want to chat that much. And both of them rent and both of them pay rent. So don't assume that they want you over their shoulder the whole time, pointing things out. If they seem to be engaged, engage right along with them. If they seem to be disconnected and they just want to experience some of it on their own, it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't want the place. It just may be part of their personality. So don't be overbearing. Certainly be available for them, but don't be overbearing. Speaking of being available, be a resource. So answer any questions that they do have. Try to come in with knowledge about the unit as much as you can. For example, people very, very commonly ask for utility costs. Now, you haven't rented that property likely ever, right? So you may not be aware directly of what those utility costs. That's a great question for people on their way out. right? When your one renter is leaving, ask them what they paid for utilities on average. Make sure you're hanging on to that information, especially if it's a benefit to you. Some of our properties, when we remodel them, we put in new insulation, we put in a new air conditioning unit, a new furnace, new windows even. That makes a difference in utility bills for that area. So call that out. Say, hey, nobody pays more than $100 in this building for both gas and electric, right? That can be enticing if in that area people are used to paying $150, $200. So definitely have the information and possibly even use that information to sell the property to these people. And finally, ask questions when appropriate. I like to ask people if they're familiar with the area, what's bringing them to want to rent the unit, sort of what their situation is a little bit. Don't go too far with those questions. Again, go back to not being overbearing, sort of read their response to things, but you can absolutely ask questions, make it feel a little more personal, connect with them. Those are great ways to go when you're leading a tour of your property.
For sure.
All right, final item is after the tour. So when somebody goes through one of our tours, again, we do that basic application. We actually go with a full screening afterwards. So I usually jump right to that. I want them to put the screening in as quickly as possible. You want to strike while the iron is hot. So immediately after the tour, especially if I have 3 people there, I will always say, hey, next step is we need to do a full screening on you. This is first come, first serve. And I'll usually look them right in the eyes and I'll say, so if you put your list or if you put your screening in first, we're going to hold it for you for 24 hours. I'll kind of go through each of them and address them as I'm saying that, so that they're very clear that, hey, I have a chance to get this property and I need to move quickly so that these 2 people next to me aren't going to jump ahead of me in line. Even if it's just one person, I'll usually mention, hey, we got another showing later today, or we got another showing in a couple of days. Be truthful, be honest, but give them that information because that can make a difference. So talk about those next steps, let them know, hey, here's what we need to do is screen you next. Provide them information that they can take away about the property. That can be that application that you're sharing with them. It may include some of those details. It can be the original listing. It could be a brochure that you've put together for the property, especially if there's additional amenities you want to call out or things that they should keep in mind afterwards. And then finally follow up with them. Check in, see if they're still interested, see what their timeline is. If you haven't heard back from them yet, sometimes people really do get busy. Sometimes people sort of move on to the next property they're looking at because maybe they didn't fall in love immediately. But if you reach out to them after that next showing that didn't go so well, they may say, oh yeah, I did actually really like that one. So following up can be really powerful and important. But again, I will say step 1 is the most important part. Discuss those next steps and make it a call to action right then and there. I'll often also ask people for their phone number and I'll text them a link to that full screening right as we're standing there. So it's as easy as them clicking something on their phone and they can put in that full screen. They don't have to go seek it out. So make it really easy for them, make the next steps clear, provide them follow-up information, and then follow up with them if you haven't heard from them.
Cool. All right, and we're going to hop into our next poll question.
All right. Do you run applications on prospective tenants? And, I think, you mentioned you have an application, AOA does too. So lots of free resources for the application process. So I'm hoping most of you say yes to this one. It's always good to have that information on paper, I think, or digitally, but later is when you want that information too. So people think, oh, I don't really need to know all this, but you would be surprised what information you're going to be really happy that you have if something goes wrong, especially if someone tries to skip out on you later and you have to locate them to sue them for unpaid rent. That's a big one. And you don't even know their date of birth or social. That's kind of problematic. So certainly it helps also in the future to protect yourself to get that information. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll, share the results. So most of you said yes, that's good.
Cool. It's good to hear. Awesome. Okay, so we've kind of alluded a lot about Innago, so now we're going to take a couple minutes to talk about us, and then we are going to turn it over to you guys, and we're going to open up a Q&A for probably the last 10 minutes. So how Innago can help, right? first thing we can help with is listing syndication, right? I said in 4 easy steps at the beginning of the webinar, what's needed. So you need to just put in some basic information, unit feature, photos, and then publish. This is an actual screenshot of Innago. So as you can see, this is the layout of our software. If you have any questions, feel free about Innago, feel free to email us. We're happy to set up a call or do a demo with you guys. But yeah, this is what it looks like. It's very quick to do a listing. And then once you're done, we'll list to realtor.com, Zumper.com, Zillow.com, and then last but not least, rental source. And then you can accept applications. So like Alexander said, you can use the Innago application, or you can use the AAOA application as well. So that is what our listing syndication looks like. And then let's talk a little bit further more about our features, right? So with Innago, we're 100% web-based. As I said at the beginning, we started in 2017. We've just really positioned ourselves as tenant management. So it is totally free to use on your end. And there's a mobile app for landlords and tenants. What you can do at Innago is you can create a listing like we just looked at. You can screen tenants. The system will automatically create invoices for you and send those electronically to your tenants, where your tenants can go ahead and make rent payments. They can open up maintenance issues. They can even sign digital documents too. So if you want to sign a lease with them or any addendums, you can do that 100% for free on our software. And then also what you can do, as I said, the mobile app, multiple user management. So I know a lot of people on here are apartment owners. So you can have yourself, your spouse, your maintenance personnel on the software. And then also what we offer is renters insurance that's totally free for you. And then your tenants are able to sign up for renters insurance. And then last but not least, support. So one of our colleagues, over the weekend was flying back from a trip and her flight got canceled and there was no support line, right? So after you get off the webinar with Dave and I, and let's say that you're interested in using Innago, who's going to be there to help? Well, we have a dedicated support team that's available Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and then also nights and weekends. And you get their direct phone number and email address. So if an issue does arise with Innago, if you have a question, if you want to check on a payment or something like that, or your tenant has an issue logging in, we're always happy to help. And if you have any questions about Innago, go ahead and put those in the Q&A. And yes, I did say we're free. So how we are free is we charge your tenants for online payments, tenant screening, and renters insurance. As you can see, it's a very nominal fee for online payments. It's a $2 charge for bank-to-bank transfers, and then 2.99% for debit or credit cards. On our screening, we'll do a criminal credit and eviction check for $35. If you just want a criminal and credit check, it's just $30. And the nice thing about Innago is you can also go ahead and add an additional fee for your time of reviewing the application. Dave and I don't do that, obviously, but it's something that you can take advantage of. And you've seen two guys from Innago all day today talking about Innago, but if you want to get a third party's opinion, go ahead and take a look at our reviews, right? So these are third parties. We don't pay for these reviews. These are real reviews from real users of Innago. So as you can see, the proof's in the pudding. We have a 4.9 star rating with Capterra, 5-star rating with G2, and then finally 4.9 with Trustpilot. Dave, anything else to add about Innago?
I think just that, like Tanvir said, we have a lot of reviews out there. I strongly encourage you to check those out on a variety of different websites. And when you're looking at a review website, when you're comparing different software, just keep in mind how they're sourcing those reviews. These are 3 platforms that actually validate the users. They make sure that these are real users. We actually have real users that sometimes reach out to us and they say, hey, we tried to give you a review on G2, but they actually rejected us because they couldn't find enough evidence that we're a real user. So sometimes we have to go say to G2, hey, this person told us that they tried to post one. But anyway, it just means that these are really trusted review sites. There's so many different review sites out there these days. So we're really proud of these scores on these particular sites in particular.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so we'll turn it over to Alexandra for the Q&A. And then also there is an offer that we'll have at the end. So stick around for that so we can share that offer with you.
Yes, and Tanvir, I asked you if I could add this poll question. I'm just going to add it because I think it's a good one. If you do want a little more hand holding and you want a consult, I know we asked you this at the registration, but if you didn't have a chance to say yes at that point and you change your mind, you want to say yes now, go ahead and put it in the poll. I think that'll just make it a lot easier. And then I could send Tanvir, you and Dave,
Yep.
the list of people who want that. So a couple of things, I think, Dave, I saw you answered some questions, which is really helpful. You basically said to someone who's asking, what's the difference between Buildium? It's free, first of all, and also it's a lot simpler. So my take on it is, you have really the core features that any landlord would want, but even so, because it is free, something that I tell a lot of our members when they're looking to use Innago is, if there is one feature that you really like and you just want to use that one feature, you don't have to worry about overpaying for something that you're not using. You could literally go in and just use the online rent payment feature or just the listing syndication, and you're not going to feel like you're paying for something that you don't really need. So that for me is the biggest takeaway. And I think a lot of you on the call maybe could use some of those features. We don't offer those features. So if, a few of these things really stood out to you, there's no harm in just trying that one or two features that you like, right? So keep that in mind. Sandra asked a question that I think I can answer, but Dave did answer as well. Can you require pet fees or service dogs on service dogs or service pets? So when it is a service animal, no, you cannot. Or if it's an emotional support animal, you cannot charge an additional pet fee. That being said, though, if they are technically a pet, so meaning there is no medical need for them, you can charge a fee. You can, in some states, charge a security deposit as well for that pet. So keep that in mind. There are definitely some types of documentation that you can ask the tenant to prove that there is a medical need for it, or if they have multiple pets or dogs or whatever animal it is, they should have a justification for that if it's medical, and then that would eliminate the fee. Also, virtual staging, what have people done? So we got lots of people asking about that in the chat. Virtual staging, there are so many companies now that do it, which is really cool. I think technology has come such a long way. I'm wondering, Dave and Tanvir, have you all experimented with virtual staging at all yet?
So for my personal properties, I have not. Go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to say the same. Yeah, I'm actually not familiar.
Okay, well, I put in Box Brownie for one. I'm not sponsoring them or anything, but it's just one of many. And I know I've used it for some listings. It's not bad. It's certainly, I think, on the pricier side, but it's done really professionally. But there are so many different tools now that you can use to make your listings look better. Even if you are taking a photo, then improving the look of that photo with different filters, making it look nice and bright. So all those things are definitely going to be helpful. And then let's see here. We have another, I think there were a couple other questions that I wrote down here. Jeff had asked if any of your tips would be any different for urban areas. He's in Newark, New Jersey, and he's wondering if this would be any different for him.
I think so. The good and bad thing about real estate is that the answer to so many questions is it depends on where you are, right? I mean, everything is so localized in a way, which is often why national trends can be misleading when you're looking into real estate. I would say the more urban the area, oftentimes the more you may rely on specific tools and specific channels. But again, it's really, I hate to say it, but it's really just dependent on where you are in your locality. I know, like in New York, for example, they actually have some listing sites that aren't available in the rest of the country, but because New York is such a huge market, they're really polished. I mean, the experience is like being on a Zillow, but it's just for New York, right? So be aware of those, just kind of do that research, talk to other landlords in the area. And again, you may find that some of the local offline avenues are also really successful in those more urban areas because there's more foot traffic in some of those places where those might be posted, whether it's a physical location or a local newspaper or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing to add, I would say, like in the listing, make sure you personalize it. Like you can add like what the walk score is, what restaurants are nearby, what like attractions are nearby, and that might help get some prospective tenants in.
Yeah, I definitely think knowing your market is definitely really the most important step. And I know a couple people mentioned Rentometer, which is another really good, or Rentometer, however you pronounce it. I've heard it pronounced both ways. I talked to the owners and I asked him, how do you pronounce it? And he's like, at this point, it's like politics, like it's like 50-50, whatever side you land on, they don't care. But anyway, I put in a link at some point to Rentometer if you guys want to try that to get a difference. But that's part of it too, right? Pricing the rental according to the market. That's going to be more important maybe in an urban area where you have more competition. You kind of have to be priced more correctly. And let's see here if I can look for
Alexander, I do
answers.
see one question on here, if you don't
Yeah.
mind, that I wanted to address. It looks like we have actually one of our Innago users on here, Joe.
Yes.
Thank you for attending. So Joe, I don't know if you got the announcement email. This is quite topical, good timing. So Joe is asking about communicating with tenants, and through Innago, you can email your tenants. You can send out mass emails. You can create templates that you can reuse. You can email individual tenants. You can attach files, etc. So it makes it easy to email. But Joe is asking, hey, are you going to support other ways of communicating with your tenants? Like, text message and pushing notifications to the tenants. We actually just on Friday of last week announced and released our newest feature, which we're so excited about, which is a chat feature in Innago, where from Innago directly, you can chat with your tenants. You can create conversations with individuals, with groups of tenants. It keeps all of that in one place so that if you ever need it in the future, like unfortunately, if there's an eviction or something like that, it's all right there for you to download and print off and use however you need to. It also makes it quick and simple to answer their questions, to share information with them. And we're going to be adding to that feature in the coming months in some really exciting ways. So we actually just released something that kind of addresses that question for you, Joe.
That is so exciting. I love that. Okay. Communication is key, as we know. So keeping
Yes.
that separate from your personal communications really helps. So
Exactly.
thank you for doing that. So there's some comments in the chat about virtual assistants and the experience. Megan says she uses them, loves them. There are like so many services now that do virtual assistants. Have you all had any experience with that?
I've talked to a lot of landlords that use them, that's for sure. And it's getting so much easier, like you said, Alexandra, to find and utilize virtual assistants. So if you find that you're getting bogged down in a lot of sort of low stakes administrative stuff, that is a great way to go to offload some of that work.
Definitely. And are you all familiar with any databases where to find crime data? That's a interesting question. I imagine you could probably find from like local police what the crime rates are in a certain area if you're looking to invest somewhere. That might be a factor, right?
Yeah, I think it's pretty localized. I'm not familiar with very reliable national ones. I've actually looked into this a little bit before, a few years ago, and didn't find much. Like there's some platforms like Neighborhood Scout, if you've heard of that one, that can give you. But I think that the best is to go with some local resources, and most cities are going to have services. But if you're in a more rural area, it might be a little bit harder to track that down. You could reach out to the county, et cetera. But I think local is usually the best way to go for that kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. Megan says Movoto, Movoto, has some info there. Interesting. I'll have to check that out. And let's see if I can get back to a couple other ones that I missed. Jessica had asked earlier if Innago can be used with a company website to syndicate listings. So if they could sort of, I guess, integrate with you all in that way.
Yeah, so there's not going to be a direct connection where like clicking publish and Innago is going to publish it to the website, but every listing that you create, we give you a dedicated URL for that listing. So I know a lot of landlords will just simply grab those URLs and they'll put them on their website. Like you click the button and it takes you to this Innago URL, but from the user's experience, it feels like they're still on that same website. They've personalized it in a way to make it feel like that. So you can get it connected and sort of feeling integrated, but it's not going to actually be directly integrated through an API or anything like that.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's simple enough. I think once you have that link, it's,
Exactly.
that's all you really need to do. It's easy to plug in. So another question was, someone asking the difference between an apartment and a condo. If it's for rent, it's an apartment. So it's safe to say your listings on the call will be apartment listings probably, if you are listing there. Let's see here if I can find any other questions that we may have missed. Let's see. I think that was it there. Let me see if I can go back and find any others that maybe were answered that we can, go tap back into. Oh, someone did ask about market trends. So although we're not covering it on this webinar, Zillow just put out a market trend. They do on a pretty regular basis. That's a great resource to use. Rentometer, which I've already talked about, they also do their own analysis based on their data. So you can always check out like which markets are going up or down. The thing with that though, is that overall it is so market centric that, to say that, oh, the housing market or the rental market is doing this or that is so general that you're kind of missing out on, there are markets that are doing really well. And, and those trends change over time. We're actually going to have in our upcoming issue of Rent Magazine, which is coming out next month, an overview from CoStar. They're also a great resource. So there's lots of resources for data. Just don't get too bogged down in the numbers. They do change. They are very specific to the market, and it's hard to really put that together. That would be a very time sensitive kind of presentation that, isn't really evergreen, but we'll try to put out information for you, in our newsletter or in the magazine about the current state of, certain markets and how they're doing. So I think that will wrap up the questions. And then if we missed any, we'll go ahead and, reach out to you later. I'll let you guys talk about this offer. This is also really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to our website that we created for this today, Innago.com/AAOA webinar, we'll give you $25 for signing up and using Innago. And if you have any questions, our contact information will be there. And then Alexandra can send that in the follow-up when she sends recording. So yeah, we are very happy to have you guys today. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, we just love how great a resource AAOA is for landlords. We know how much it helps landlords. So we wanted to throw our hat in the ring and give even a little bit more than just free software. We're actually giving you money to use Innago now.
That's so crazy to me, but I love it. Of course, if there isn't already enough reasons to use Innago, certainly a $25 gift card helps. So I encourage you to take a look as well. And then I am going to send you all the PowerPoint slides, the recording, this special offer link, their contact information. If you need any resources or referrals, you can contact Dave or Tanvir as well, or me, and we'll be happy to help you. And I'm just so glad that you all stuck around, and hopefully you learned something new about how to market your properties in our modern 2023 environment. And I'm really excited about some of those new features you guys talked about on Innago as well. I love to hear that you all are just making it better and better, as Joe stated, a long-term customer here. So with that being said, please take the exit survey as well as you leave. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this presentation, and hopefully you'll join us for the next one. Dave and Tanvir, again, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And this is really, really helpful and insightful.
Yeah, thanks, Alexandra. Thanks, everybody. It's great.
All right,
Thank you,
everyone.
guys.
Take care. Bye.